What we'll be spending some time today in Joshua 23. So if you want to go ahead and find that, it'll take us a little while to get there, but that's okay too. I don't know about you, but growing up in my family, I've come to experience two dimensions of life. As I have now become an old person, as a few of our youth have informed me that I now am, I feel like I have the desire to pass on my great wisdom to those that are younger than me. Do you all ever experience this? You who are also called old people by our youth. But you kind of want to pass on things that you've learned so they don't have to figure that out. And also, you go through this experience. This is maybe more closer to you guys. Do you ever find that older people in your family want to give you good advice about how you should live? Do you ever get any interesting advice from them? My family was weird, so I got lots of interesting advice. I had one great uncle who said, "Now when you're out there working, make sure you don't take any wooden nickels." And I never, to this day, I don't know what he meant by that, but he told me that for years. And I always told him I wouldn't. I had another great uncle who gave me advice about love. Now, Jacob, you want to take notes on this, okay? He said, this is the most important advice I can give you about dating. It don't matter if she's a little ugly, if her family's got money, especially if they've got a pond. He was a bachelor all of his life. I can't imagine why. Those were some pieces of advice I've gotten that kind of stayed with me. Good piece of advice. It wasn't all bad. My dad told me if you pick a job you like to do, you won't ever be mad about having to get up on Monday morning and go to work. It's an important piece of advice. Dangerous piece of advice. Sometimes you got to go along to get along. Now that's true. There are some people that are so contrary that they'll bury them sideways because that's the way that they live their whole life. They're just cross with everybody. But that can be a dangerous piece of advice if we take that too far. I've passed along a little wisdom to Carter. He helps me. One of the tidbits of wisdom I pass along is don't ever buy a Craftsman lawnmower. And he's helped me work on that a little bit lately. He's very patient. He'll hand me my screwdriver, my socket wrench. He knows what all those things are, my pliers. Because every time we mow, there's something we have to do to it. A couple of weeks ago, I got on it to mow. The battery was dead. So we went to see Brian and we got a battery. And we came back and we put the battery on and it came a thunderstorm. And then we went inside and waited till the grass was a little dry. We went back outside and we hit a stick and the belt came off. And at that point I was getting a little upset. And I said, you need to pray that Daddy will have a good day. And he did. It was a very sweet prayer. And I said, I just can't get this back in here. He thought for a minute and he gave me a hammer. He said, hit it with your hammer. Hit it hard. Maybe I need to be a better example with the advice I'm passing along. How you fix things. In Joshua, we almost have Joshua as a man at the end of his life. Now last week when we were with Joshua and Caleb, they were young men and they were going into the land of Canaan to spy it out, to explore it. Wildernesses camped on the end of it, just this tiny desert outside the promised land. And he's one of 12 that go in to see if this land really is everything God has said it would be, if it was worth the trip. And they come back and they say, it is. But 10 of those 12 said, the people are like giants. We're like grasshoppers to them. We can't handle it. Let's just go back and be slaves. And Joshua and Caleb, as young men, said, no, if God is with us, we can take it. We can. We have Joshua at the end of his life here. After a very long life leading God's people as Moses' successor. After a career where he led these people who were really just homeless former slaves wandering through the desert. And often he had to lead them in battle against people who wanted to wipe them off the face of the earth. And God used him to lead his people to many great victories. And the primary directive that he has given, that he says dozens of times in Joshua, is drive out, displace the people of the land. Not go in and chop all their heads off, but gradually this will be your land. And their ways that they're doing in this land, it's so bad the land is vomiting them out. And your way, God's new way, his new people are going to take it over. So we find him at the end of what is an exemplary life. Finally, he needs to say something. And this is what he says. A long time after these things, when they had renewed the covenant with God, and the Lord had given rest to Israel from all their enemies all around, Joshua had grown old and was now well advanced in years. He summoned all of the people, their leaders and heads and judges and officers, and said to them, I am old and well advanced in years. You have seen everything that the Lord your God has done to these nations for your sake. For it is the Lord your God who fought for you against them. I have allotted to you as an inheritance for your tribes all those nations that remain, along with the nations I've already cut off, from the Jordan to the great sea in the west. The Lord your God will push these opponents back from you and drive them out of your sight, and you will possess their land, as the Lord your God promised you. Therefore, be very steadfast to observe and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside from it neither to the right or the left, that you may not be mixed in with these nations left here among you, or make mention of the names of their gods, or swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them, but hold fast to the Lord your God, as you have done up to this day. For the Lord has driven out before you great and strong nations, and as for you, no one has been able to withstand you to this day. One of you puts 1,000 enemies to flight, since it is the Lord your God who fights for you as he promised. So be very careful to love the Lord your God. For if you turn back and join the survivors of these nations left here among you, and you intermarry with them and they with yours, know assuredly that the Lord your God will not continue to drive out the nations before you, but they will be a snare and a trap for you, a scourge for your sides, thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land the Lord your God has given you. I am about to go the way of all the earth, and you know in your hearts and souls, all of you, that not one thing has failed of the good things the Lord your God promised concerning you. All that he has said has come to pass for you. Not one of them has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God promised concerning you have been fulfilled, so the Lord your God will bring upon you the bad things, until he has destroyed you from this good land that he has given to you. If you transgress the covenant of your God, which he has enjoined on you, to go and serve other gods and bow down to them, the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and you shall perish quickly from the good land that he has given you. It's a bit of a long farewell speech. But in a sense, he gathers these people together to give it, because he knows he's going to pass away. The reason that the old people in our lives give us that wisdom, but it don't matter if she's a little ugly, if she's got money in her palm, or whatever it is they pass on to us. How to be a person, how to live. The reason they're all about teaching us that when we're younger, the reason we want to give it when we're older, is because we know we only have so much time. And those who are coming up after us, we want them when they're on their own, coming into their own, to do well. To do well at being the people God has envisioned them to be. It's almost like Joshua is standing here on the side of it, watching them under his leadership, having done well, having grown up well to be good boys and good girls. But he's about gone. And what are they going to be when he is gone? You who are parents of adult children, do you remember what it was like when you dropped your child off at college? Well, all of a sudden, for the next so many years, they're not going to live with you. Are they going to be the people you raised them to be? How will they turn out? And that's where Joshua is standing here wondering. So he wants to give them some guidance. What he's afraid of what will happen is, not that their faith will fail at the critical moment. They've stood in that challenge. They've had moments where they stood for God, where they did what was right, and they were blessed because of it. And now everything God told them life would be, it was. I think what he was worried about is, now that they have some rest from their enemies, now that things aren't so hard, that they've had some victory, that they're finally standing a little bit, who will they be? As they settle in this land of God's promises and all of his good things, he is afraid that they will lose themselves in the midst of having won it. And that can happen to somebody. That can happen to somebody if they become a little bit overconfident. Just as the other 10 spies were guilty of having too much timidity and not thinking God was big enough to bring them into the land against the people. Sometimes when we feel like we've mastered something, when we feel like we're getting really good at something, that can get us in trouble, can't it? Now, my dad, when he was teaching me to be an electrician, now you have to understand, he's the kind of person that if the road was frozen and you were willing to drive a pickup truck with a sled chained to it, he would ride the sled with a flashlight in his feet. He did that a few times, just to make sure if any cars were coming, they could see him. But when it came to work, he was very, very cautious because we worked around voltage. I remember being younger, there was a guy who was an older electrician that had taught my dad a lot when he was getting started, that's been working with us again some, and he was very confident. He didn't believe in a tester. You know what a tester is? I meant to bring mine, I forgot it. Yeah. Now, a tester is a voltage meter, and the louder it screams, the more voltage there is on whatever you're testing. And it's something you want to make very, very sure, if you're on a 3-phase panel or higher voltage, that it's not active when you're sticking your hands in there. Now this older fella, he said, I don't believe in them testers. You ought to be able to tell them. It's, look, your hands, the hair on your arms will stand up if that has power on it. It's very scientific, but okay. He said, I can just tell. I know I turned that off. I don't need to check it. And he was a master electrician, knew what he was doing. But he knew what he was doing so well, he forgot to check a panel. And he grabbed a hold of a 3-phase leg. Now, if you got a little electricity, it pulls you back, right? What happens if you get a hold of a lot? You can't let go. It convulses your muscles and you start to burn. My dad happened to be close enough that he realized what was happening. And he hit that man with a 2x4 to knock it out of his hand. Now, if he hadn't been there, this master electrician could have lost his life and been hurt very badly because he could not let go. As it was, his nose and his ears were bleeding. He said, well, I'm going to go get me a tester, Sammy. And after that, Dad said, see there, why I always tell you to check stuff? I said, yes, sir, I do, and I'll always check it. And after that, I did. Joshua's kind of afraid that these people who have done so well in a moment of crisis, when it was very, very clear, are you going to do good or are you going to do bad? That now that things are not so clear, when they're settling in the land, will they lose their sense of who God wants them to be? I think one of the things that we struggle with is we don't always have a very good picture of that. Now, Canaan was not an uninhabited place. There are lots of ites there. If you go through your Old Testament, there's these ites and those ites, and they're everywhere. I think that what he is worried about is as they are settling in the land, and as the scripture says, they're living in villages they didn't build, and farming fields. I think that what he is afraid of is not just that they will live there, that they will learn the ways of the place. Now, have you ever known anybody who is from a different region who has settled in here to East Tennessee? Do they have to go through a period where they adjust to having sugar in their tea? What y'all means and thither and yon, and some things that we say. They go, but I don't understand what you're saying. Whatever it is their accent sounds like to us. They have to go through an adjustment period where they learn the ways of the land. And that can be good, but it can be bad. I think what he's afraid of is as they're in the midst of this place where God's promised, they're going to look at the people who live there and say, my goodness, they are so sophisticated. I mean, we live our whole lives in tents in the desert. And look at these towns. Well, they have paved streets. Have you ever heard of such a thing, Jim Bob? No, I haven't. And they were so impressed by how advanced these people were that they had begun ironworking, which was a huge advancement in that world. They had writing. We know that they had writing in Canaanite civilizations. They had advanced farming techniques. And the people who were just learning to farm, because God had fed them in the desert, they would have seemed like geniuses. Now, if you see somebody who's really, really successful and doing really, really well, is there not a temptation to want to be like them? And that can be a good thing. We want to learn how it is that they're getting what they're getting. And we'll copy what it is that they're doing. If you want to learn a trade, you go work with somebody who knows the trade, right? And that's how you learn it. If you want to become a doctor, you go to school and you study all kinds of things about how your parts and pieces work and how you cut them apart, put them back together, and all the other things that you can do. And you learn these things from people who know. What Joshua is afraid of is not just that they will learn those things, but that they will learn the things that God did not like about that land, that they would become Canaanized, that they would be indistinguishable from the people who lived there before God brought them in. Now, why would that be such a bad thing? You have to understand the people of Canaan were very religiously tolerant. They wouldn't have insisted you believe in just one God or any particular one. You could pick your preference. You could pick the one that give you what you want if you gave it the right offerings. But they were also a people who weren't afraid to do you wrong if they needed to, who tended to see people as a means to an end. And as long as you get what you want in the end, you're more or less a good person, I suppose that's okay. Stuff to them, their wealth, their success was more important than what they had to do to get it. In their religious faith, they worshiped a series of fertility cults. And what would happen in these cults is, whatever your firstborn child was, you would bring that at a certain point to a temple, and they would typically burn the child alive inside an effigy of that god or goddess. Because if they were willing to give such a great gift as that, then the gods would be in their debt and have to bless them. Some of the things they did would be horrifying to us, and that was the way they lived, and they were an advanced people. And Joshua was afraid, what if Israel becomes like these people are? Israel had a particular calling, and it thunders down off the mountains at the giving of the Ten Commandments that you are to be a holy nation. That was God's calling for them. Sometimes when we think of holy, we're a little confused about what that means. Did any of you have a grandparent who had a whole set of dishes that nobody ever touched? They were in theory for special things, but nothing was ever special enough for them to be used. Right? They were set apart in a cabinet. She's telling on somebody. But my great-grandma had those. She had all these china dishes, and we only used them once. And of course, because we used them, somebody broke the gravy bowl, and they were never, ever used ever again. They were set apart from all other things. The idea of holiness is that you are distinct in a way that you are set apart from other things. It's not so we can be arrogant to be holy, while the rest of everybody is bad. But it is particularly and notably different in quality and character than other things of its kind. That's what it is to be holy. That there's something notably different about it, and you don't just mix it in with the other things of its kind, because it's different. The idea of holiness is essential to that. Now, when we think of holiness, sometimes it is attached to things that are not so nice. When we say Mickey is just holier than thou, that wouldn't be a very nice thing to say about Mickey, would it? Or we call somebody a holy Joe or holy roller. That's not a real nice thing to say about somebody. But what it is to be holy in the biblical idea is that we are distinct from other people who live a way outside of God. And that when people look at our lives, they see that what God promises really is real, that there's something to it. That there's a difference in the quality and character, that if people came among us as people who were in covenant with God, being made holy, they wouldn't have to worry about being done wrong, because we wouldn't do that. That they see in us something of the love and mercy and goodness of God. That's what it is to be holy. And I think that beyond whatever else, that is God's chief aim in our life, is to make us holy. I had a very long talk with a friend this week who just had a terrible struggle. He was the pastor of a very, very large church at one time in his life. And just through a series of bad choices and personal tragedies and a number of other things, kind of some mean church people as a phenomenon thrown in there too, he has been kind of trapped in a job where they are really struggling to make ends meet with his wife, and they left the area for a while because they thought they had a church job in another state, and when they got there, the church rescinded the offer. They said, "We changed our mind, we found somebody local. We're terribly sorry." He said, "But we've quit our jobs, we've come all this way." They said, "We're very sorry." And it was one of those situations. And his wife interviewed this week for several teaching jobs in Indiana. And he was talking to me, and he said, and I have his permission to share this. Is God just, what is he doing to us? Is he trying to break us? Is he trying to punish us? Does he hate us? What is it? And of course, my first response is to say, "No, God's not doing this to you. This is just people. This is the way life is." Of course, I wanted to say that. I thought about that for a long time, and I called him the next day. I said, maybe it is God. I said, maybe it is God doing these things to you. And if it is, what is it that God really wants in our life? He thought about that for a minute. He said, I guess to make us like Jesus is the thing that God does when He gets involved in our life, whatever that takes. I said, is that more important to God than us having a lot of money? Yes. Is that more important to God than us being happy? Yes. Is it more important to God that we're holy rather than healthy? Yes, I see where you're going here. I don't mean to say I'm this great source of wisdom. Usually He's the one correcting me. But this holiness business, it means something to God. And it is what God will do to each one of us if He gets His way with us. Frederick Buechner says it's a wildly unreasonable process because it makes a shamble out of all of our very reasonable ambitions to grow up to be this or to grow up to be that. It's not really a human possibility at all because holiness is godness. It's the quality of godlikeness. And only God and His work in our lives makes that possible. But being holy is what growing up in the biblical sense really means. That's what we're to grow up into. I think our parents would all be disappointed in us if we grew up as dependent on them now as we were when we were Carter's size, right? There is an idea that we should mature and become able and become more. And that's certainly here in the Bible. No matter how old we are or how much we've achieved or dream of achieving, none of us are truly grown up until this thing of holiness happens to us. As Peter put it in his first letter, out of darkness we are called into a marvelous light. And Peter knew a lot about darkness if you stop to think about it. Especially when he had looked into the very face of the light itself and known he had let it down. But we are called to be like that, filled with so much light that we bring it to others. You've met people like that in your life, and just because you knew them, you felt a little closer to God. That there was something about them that drew you into something more. Are we going to be like that? As we go through our life and we think about what are we going to grow up to be? What advice are we going to follow? We worry, are we going to be winners? Are we going to be losers? Are we going to be rich or poor? Beggars or thieves or saints? Or what are we going to be? Or in most cases, a little of all of those in any one of us. But only one thing is really worth worrying about. Will we become holy? Israel as a nation was not much good at it. God knew that, and Joshua knew that too. He remembered that golden calf and the rebellions in the wilderness too well to be tricked into otherwise. And we know that because we're them. We're the inheritors of their promise. And we know how hard it is for us to be holy. The fact that Israel wasn't much good at being holy and didn't much want to do it is what most of the Old Testament is about. They wanted to be like the other nations, like the people around her, religiously progressive and powerful like Egypt, militarily mighty and strong and unbreakable like Syria, comfortable, doing whatever they wanted to do, just going with the flow like Canaan. We want to be like the people around us. Give us a king like other nations have. And so on and so forth. What they wanted was security and clout and a place in the sun. When she didn't get it, she resented it. Like us, Israel wanted her way sometimes and not God's. And when what God wanted seemed too much or His promises too remote, she looked for other things. In that world, she looked for other gods that could give her the money and the comfort and the security and the pleasure and the comfort or whatever it was she wanted. And she spent all her life on those. We live in a demythologized world, and we don't run around looking for that in some idol to bow down to. But there are a lot of people looking for their comfort and their security and their peace in a dollar, in a job, in a degree, in a pill bottle, or in any number of other things you define. Some people just look for it, and other people say, you know, it would make a lot of sense. It can be any number of other things that people are looking for that comfort and security and leaning in outside of God, and a lot of those people are filling up church houses.